2018. Welcome to the meeting of the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board of the City of San Angelo. I will read you the paragraph related to public comment. The board takes public comment on all items in the regular agenda. Public input on a regular agenda item will be taken at its appropriate discussion. Public input on an item not on the agenda or consent agenda may be identified and requested for consideration by the board at this time. The board may request an item to be placed on a future agenda or for a consent agenda item to be moved to the regular agenda for public comment. That said, is there any public comment? No, okay, so I would like to welcome to our board, and you know there were 2 vacations, so at least we have done 50% of the work. Welcome Debbie Wilson at the end of the table on this side. Debbie is very familiar with our board because she was on the Recreation Board, which you know was merged with the Parks Board and makes now the Parks and Recreation Board. So welcome, Debbie. Much easier to have a quorum that way, which is important for all of us so we can skip a meeting from time to time. Okay, so the consent agenda. Consideration of approving the February 22, 2018 meeting minutes. I should remind you that we didn't have a meeting in March, so that's really the last meeting we had. And there were a lot of motions that were approved or tabled, and I hope you all read the minutes because they're pretty dense, and I want to make sure that we didn't make any mistake. Any comment?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the minutes as presented.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Well, motion is approved. Now we go to the regular agenda. And unfortunately, we don't have the possibility to use the screen and the pen that Carl usually uses. But Carl will try to do the best job he can with the big screen in front of him. Okay, Carl, it's yours.
If you're ready, we'll go ahead.
Yes, sir.
So at the last meeting, we've been talking several items about Lake Nasworthy, and it was mentioned at the last meeting in February that it would be good to review the Lake Nasworthy master plan that was done back in 2013. Talk about it a little bit because it does have some interesting points and concepts in it. So that's what we're going to do today. And the way the caption is written, you can make any recommendation related to this as you see fit. The plan was completed in November of 2013, so it has been a while. It's been almost 5 years. And it was done by an outside group and funded with the interest earnings from the Lake Nasworthy Trust Fund. The purpose of the plan was to see how Lake Nasworthy could be developed in terms of residential areas and tourism areas. Those 2 are existing now, residential areas and areas for tourism. But it was the plan looked at how that could be maximized, realizing that folks live out there and realize that Lake Nasworthy is one of our key areas for tourism and economic impact in terms of tourism. It looked at market factors, all the different activities, assets at the lake, needs for the lake, which we'll also go into in our next item on the agenda, and it looked at a few catalyst projects to start implementing this plan. And then we can touch a little bit on the impact of the plan since 2013. This is the area of the lake that was looked at, basically all of Lake Nasworthy and areas around it. shown in the purple. And within that were areas separated into unique areas, and we'll go into each of those briefly. The first was the action sports area, which you see in the yellow on the far left, in the western part of Lake Nasworthy. Where is it? Middle Concho and Spring Creek, I think, feed into it. And in those areas, they're quite mostly used for boating. We've got the drag boat races there, the wakeboarding event there. There's an archery range at North Concho. I'm sorry, Middle Concho Park. There's mountain biking. A lot of that is done closer to Twin Buttes. There's trail running, and of course camping, which obviously isn't an action sport, but it's related. The second area is Harbor Village, where Mary Lee Park is. And that was one of the catalyst areas, and I'll show that a little bit more briefly. But Harbor Village, it looked at Mary Lee Park, where the nature center is, where the beach is. And the idea, the concept was to convert that into a resort area. We would have a marina, a nicer beach, shops, restaurants, a hotel, boat rentals, splash pads, party boats, just like a mini resort. That was the concept. The third area is a little more unique. It's called the Nature Education Area. And it's on both sides of the lake. On the south side, most of this land is Bureau of Reclamation land, and this up here is city land. But the concept was to include things that we enhance things that we don't necessarily have now. Is relocating the nature center from its current location at Mary Lee Park to that area, and the plan showed it, I think, about at this location. A family entertainment center, an outdoor entertainment center with these different activities you see here on the screen. And of course, others could be considered. But just a place for families to go to have outdoor entertainment. The next area was called the Special Opportunity. And it's maybe hard to see, but the hill is right about there. The hill at Lake Nasworthy. The old power plant is there. I think it was probably the concept that's the most far-reaching in terms of conceptual, because it included it, and part of the opportunity is already gone because it converted the old power plant building, which isn't there anymore, into kind of a hub where you'd build out and have commercial areas for retail and shops and restaurants, different things you see here, residential area, hotel, maybe even moving the nature center over there, different outdoor activities like windsurfing and zip line. And I think it also incorporated the wetland area that's near that area. And I honestly don't know who owns that land around the power plant right now, but the city does not own it. So it's a far-reaching concept and opportunity. And I think some of the more active activities, like the zip line, would be around where the hill is. But of course, a good portion of that is surrounded by residences. Another, I think this is the last one, it's called the Community Activity Area. It's on the far east side, starting from the southeast, going up to the dam. What is that, Country Club Road? Mostly along Country Club Road. You have Pecan Creek Pavilion down here. Boy Scout Camp is up here. This one kind of gave a nod to the community, included different community activities, some of which could also be used for tourism. And I think it was probably the most in my opinion, realistic concept of all of them. So it looked at enhancing fishing, canoeing, kayaking, hiking, and birding opportunities. And we're going to look at a couple of these, I think 3 of these in a little more detail here in a second. The plan also looked at the proposed trail system. This may be hard to see, but on the lighter sections, it had on-road bike routes, like along here, on-road bike lanes, that's down Knickerbocker. I think that was mentioned at the last meeting, something that we'd still want to try to implement. Hike and bike trails, some interesting hike and bike trails. One along the old railroad right-of-way, this straight run here. And also some interior trails. This does show a little bit better a proposal of a new entrance to Spring Creek Park, right here, across from the airport. And that's the area where the nature education area would be, where perhaps the nature center would be, and the family entertainment area. It's more densely wooded, more natural. And then the last part of the plan was talking about implementation, what strategies could be followed to have this implemented. And part of it seriously was to look at catalyst projects. One was Harbor Village, which you saw. The second is the power plant site, which was the opportunity area. And the third was the birding center, which was the community area. We'll look just a little bit at those. So this was the Harbor Village. This is Mary Lee Park. Nature Center's here. The beach is right about here. All the green is Mary Lee Park or city-owned land. The yellow is existing residential. Blue is currently privately owned. The pink is other city-owned land. You have the Goodfellow Rec Camp, which is the city-owned property we leased to Goodfellow. So that's the area. So this kind of lays that a little bit flat. It's a different angle, but it shows a concept of how you could develop that for a mini resort. Hotels, shops, restaurants, nicer beach, some developed residential areas on the other side. And I think this is the only one, as I recall, that the city actually solicited formally for proposals about 3 or 4 years ago. And as I recall, we did not get a single proposal. This was the opportunity area around the old power plant. I think this may have been that I think where I'm pointing it to, I think, was the power plant building itself. And around it, you would have different developments, residential, a little bit of commercial, some recreation activities. It's the one I thought was the most far-fetched in terms of actually implementing and actually being successful. I thought that the Harbor Village concept could work. And the last one was the birding area, which I think does have good potential. It's one of the old, you're right, Debbie, it's U.S. Fish and Wildlife land, service land. It was an old fishery location. If you can see the rectangles on the screen, those were old ponds where fish were reproduced and grown. And it's basically opposite of the dam. The dam is runs along here. It's below the dam. But that would be the area that would be a potential birding site. Here's a conceptual of what that could look like. And here you can see the old pond, the old fish ponds. Creating a playa, trails, bird watching areas, a small visitor center. That one I do think has some potential. I think it would be the least costly and could have some impact on tourism. There were some other things that were touched on in the master plan. Ongoing concern for shoreline erosion, mostly from boating activities. Lake water depths, which we still struggle with some of these issues where the water is shallow in some areas. Improving utilities around the lake, which is actually being considered and talked about at recent council meetings in terms of improving utilities, especially sewer lines around the lake. Dredging was done back in the late 90s. I think it ended in 1999. I think that was our first half-cent sales tax referendum and project. But there are concerns about and desires to complete that dredging and follow up and improve some of the areas at the lake. And some of those were talked about in the master plan. So that's the master plan in a nutshell. If you want to talk in depth about any of these other areas. The next item on the agenda is to talk about some of the things that the residents of the Lake Nasworthy area are talking about and are concerned about and would like to try to see some improvements in, and we can talk about some specific things then. But if you want to talk about the master plan, now would be the time.
Okay, thanks, Carl. Anybody has any questions related to that plan?
I'd like to see a timetable set maybe for some of these ideas and implementations. You know, they look great on paper, but it'd be nice to start taking steps toward making some of this happen.
Yeah, I'm trying to think how best to do that. Because this was done out of the Development Planning Services, the planning department. It's not really a Parks and Recreation effort, but it definitely would impact our area. I don't know, maybe identify one of these, some of these catalyst projects, some of the concepts that are in here that you think you might like to try to tackle, and maybe make recommendations on those, or have the homeowners association make that recommendation to this board or to city council. I guess staff needs some direction as to what we should focus on, because they're big projects.
Hey, Carl, can you tell us what the reaction of your staff and yourselves has been looking at this plan? And you said already, I think, this is far-fetched, meaning you don't believe it will happen. And you said this is possible, meaning that it can happen. So how many of the possible and how many the far-fetched? So we may just look at what you think as a team makes sense. And the other question is, how was that study received by the people in San Angelo? Is there anything that stood out that people really thought, well, maybe it makes sense, that the newspaper commented on it? So I would like to see if we can have your point of view as, I guess, specialists, and then see if there was any kind of reaction from the public side.
Well, yeah, I can talk about that. In terms of, well, at least my opinion, when I talk about far-fetched and possible, I'm talking about the catalyst projects. And of the catalyst projects, the Harbor Village, I think could work. I mean, it's a big project, but I think could work. The opportunity area, I just think that's the one that just seemed to me that it just doesn't fit our market area. The other one was the birding area, which I think does fit and I think could be achieved. That one seems very possible to me in terms of the catalyst projects. And as I recall, when this plan was done, Paul Alexander was a council member, and I think he kind of pushed it forward to make it happen, make this plan happen. And my impression of it when it was done and adopted, it didn't really have strong legs to keep it going. And I think the council changed over, priorities changed, and so it just didn't carry through.
Well, I understand that any housing project, residential project, would need to get a new water plant put in place because the city doesn't have enough capacity to service that area. Did you hear about that?
I have heard that.
Yeah, okay, so anything that's residential automatically becomes a big ticket item. So in my mind, and maybe I need concurrence here, what if we are interested in moving something forward as part of the plan as one of the catalyst projects, the only one that would fit the equation would be the birding area. Is that summarized well? Or?
Right. Well, and I think the birding one concept fits our area because it's parks and recreation.
And the city own the lands.
Pretty sure. I'll have to double check. I'm pretty sure. That would be one thing we would double check on. But man, I don't want to move forward with trying to push something forward if the homeowners association is not too excited about pushing that one forward.
I agree. Eventually, we need to see the second part of the
Right.
agenda, which basically will help us to understand what the homeowners want.
Right.
But if they come back with the idea we need to do residential development, it doesn't seem to be part of what we can.
Exactly. Exactly.
So we can help in developing parks and recreation.
Right. And as you'll see in the next item, there's other parks and recreation items that I think would come first before the birding area. Some things
Okay.
we know that we should be doing before that.
Can you tell us about that then?
Yes.
Thank you.
But that would be one of the items that,
I just see the lake as a golden nugget when it comes to parks and recreation, and that's what we're all about. We have a golden nugget in front of us, and I don't want to kick it to the back and dust it off in another 20 years. That's my whole point, is let's see what is realistic. Let's see what's going to take some future development, whether it be infrastructure out at the lake, which we do know needs to happen before any continued construction can happen out there. But again, things take time, and takes a series of years to make things happen anyway. So I don't see a problem with starting to get that ball rolling and doing what we need to do to get it nudged and get it rolling. And
which
find
ball
out.
is which ball is that?
Which ball is that? I know there's a lot of them.
I know.
There's a lot of them in there I love.
And that's what we've been struggling with is so many projects and, how do we
Exactly.
prioritize
Exactly.
direct staff to concentrate on? And I suppose we could come back to this item. Maybe we can talk about the next item and then come back to this if you want.
Good idea.
So we'll table that item, come to the next one. Brandon, is that okay if we go back to an item if?
Yeah, if the board thinks that there would be relevant information in the next item, then yeah, it's up to the chairman if he wants to talk about the original item.
Okay. Next item,
Please.
discussion of the Lake Nasworthy Homeowners Association efforts as it relates to parks and recreation and recommendation of any related matters. So this will be a shared item between me and Debbie. I would first want to start talking about some of the things that we have done recently out there that I think are fairly significant and have improved the use of the lake. Working with the Chamber of Commerce and to help the drag boat races, we got funds and built a new boat ramp, the Spring Creek Park boat ramp near the marina. I think that ramp has been well received. I've only heard good things about it. Debbie, if you've heard any bad things, let me know, but I've only heard good things. We do have upcoming funded improvements, Middle Concho Park boat ramp expansion. There are 2 boat ramps at Middle Concho Park. Both are kind of narrow. This project is the ramp that's immediately as you come into the park, right past the gate. If you keep driving straight, it's the boat ramp there. It's basically expanding it, doubling the size, adding restrooms and parking. This project is funded, but we are in conversations with TPWD, Texas Parks and Wildlife Department, to see if we can secure additional funds, because we do need to tap into the sewer line, which is several hundred feet away, which has a cost. We were hoping to do something else when we applied for the grant to get the funding, but we are going to need to tap into that sewer line, which brings the cost up about $100,000. And we're waiting to hear back from TPWD if we can get those additional funds added to the grant so we can continue on with that project. If we don't get the funds, we can still do the project. We just won't be able to do the restroom improvements. We can do parking and the boat ramp improvements.
And which restrooms are you talking about?
It's basically if you go in Middle Concho Park, past the gate, those restrooms on the left that are near that boat ramp. And Middle Concho Park, it's kind of on the back side of the lake, but it's very popular in terms of tent camping and camping in general. And it's just a nice place on the backside to launch your boat. It's a popular park. Spring Creek Park is the most popular park, but Middle Concho Park is probably the second. So some outstanding things that are needed in terms of improvements at Lake Nasworthy. As you know, the pier at Mary Lee Park has been closed for, I think, 2-3 years now. We had an engineer do an assessment of the pier. They basically said you need to shut it down, and that's what we did. And I think the cost was, depending on how you rebuilt it, they said you can't repair it. You shouldn't repair it. The pilings are so worn out that you can't repair it. You need to replace it. So there would be a cost to remove the old pier, design the new pier, and build a new pier. And depending on how big the pier is, we're probably looking at about $400,000 to $500,000 to do that project. And the thought is you could make it nicer to have a pavilion at the end of the pier that you could rent out for parties to make some revenue. Nature Center, at some point along the way, we've got to address the Nature Center. It's in an old facility. We keep it up as best we can, but it needs some improvements. Pavilions at the popular park, Spring Creek Park and Middle Concho Park. There's conceptual plans to add large pavilions for folks to use for events and for parties. Those could be rented out too. There's always a desire to improve the restrooms out at the lake parks. Part of the problem is the restrooms are on septic systems, so they don't have a large capacity. There has been a expressed desire to add shower facilities to the restrooms. We don't have that. You really can't do that on a septic system with the number of people we have visiting. So we really need to expand the sewer system in and around Lake Nasworthy, which is something that council has been talking about the last few meetings. But there's a strong desire to improve the restrooms out there. And the playgrounds, all the playgrounds at all the parks at Lake Nasworthy, they're old generation playgrounds. It's old metal equipment, doesn't have adequate fall zone material. If we do any playground improvements out there, we should take out the old equipment, replace it with new standard equipment. So those are the outstanding parks and recreation related items.
Carl, just a minute. How do you plan to finance this?
We don't have funding.
Yeah.
There is the Lake Nasworthy Trust Fund, and Debbie may talk about this when she talks about some of her items. Trust fund exists. The corpus of that could be used, but it takes a public referendum. There is interest earnings from that, the principal of that fund, but it goes straight into pay for ongoing operations.
It goes into the general fund, is that correct, for the city?
To pay for maintenance of the lake parks, the lake operations.
They have to be lake-related.
It has to be-
Items that money is used for, the interest off the
It has to,
Lake Nasworthy Fund has to be lake-related.
yes, definitely, most definitely. Yeah, the interest doesn't go to general fund, it goes towards lake maintenance.
Activity.
Yeah, no, that's,
Is it
Has to be.
the vision of the interest of the staff to do these projects, which are necessary to maintain? It's not even improvements. It's maintain the assets. Is that the most important thing to look at right now?
right now, because we don't have funds to do otherwise.
No, but if you had funds, would that be the first thing that would be done?
If we had funds to do some of these projects,
Yeah.
what would be our priority?
Yes.
In my opinion, I think the sewer lines and the restrooms. That's just your basic comfort items to enjoy the parks at the lake.
How many septics are down there?
Every restroom is on septic except the one at Mary Lee.
Wow, that's scary.
Yes. And
Where does the
hopefully-
revenue come from on this trust fund? Is that an assessment or something at the lake owners, or?
I'm not sure how it started, but the fund builds up by the sale of properties around the lake. Maybe going back 15, 18 years.
In the year 2000, yeah, that was
Almost
put
18
forth.
years.
Any of the lease lots that were sold to leasehold owners,
Whole amount goes into the fund?
I don't know if 100% of it goes, but a big chunk of it.
Yeah, I don't know for sure, but that was my impression, is that the sale of those money go back into that. There may be some administrative fee that comes off of that to administer that, but that's how the corpus grows.
Do we have anyone in Parks and Recreation whose job it is to go out and look to secure donors for projects y'all are interested in?
Not anybody specifically. It's really just project related. And the little that we do is related to our own events, like Riverfest, and Recreation does a lot of solicitation to underwrite events and activities.
Has there ever been interest in the city in looking into getting someone who would target donors?
Basically, somebody who tries to secure funds
Yeah,
for.
who would say we want to build on this lake community and go out and try and target raising funds for that.
Not that I recall in terms of serious discussion of trying to hire somebody to do that. I do know there's folks out there that do that write grants, and basically their salary gets paid from part of the grants that they get. But we don't have a position like that.
I think it usually comes from the private side, and we have foundations in town that basically have that type of activity. They raise funds, some are dedicated to some projects, some are not, and then they use these non-dedicated funds to follow on some projects. But right now, San Angelo Foundation might have 20 different projects to look at. And they're all competing. So what I see here is that there's not a huge awareness in San Angelo proper of what could not the lake offer to the rest of to the entire community. It's not an asset that's considered by San Angelo as very important. I think the people around the lake believe, and certainly, that it is a very important asset. So there's a gap. That's what I see. And the gap increases when you, from the park side, telling us, well, there are a lot of projects that need to happen, that basically will not create anything new, but just maintain or slightly improve what exists and need to be fixed. So we are in a situation where some of our assets are not even maintained at the right level. We don't have any capital to do that. And then you have the homeowners association requiring attention to try to get some project moving. And there is a master plan. I'm summarizing what I understand.
Yes.
And a master plan that has not created any excitement in San Angelo proper, and that master plan is limited by the fact that utilities are not available, by the fact that the water will become a major problem if there is no new water plants put in existence. The old one doesn't work anymore. So it's a very difficult question to tackle, and that's what I was asking you as a staff. What do you think should happen? What have you identified? And see if the homeowners association agrees with us, and then maybe find a way to look at private funds to start somewhere what you call a catalyst project. So that's the way I understand it. I don't know if I summarized the question right.
No, I
but
understand, and I agree with that. Just goes back to getting the ball moving, but I think it's worth it to find, for all the areas of parks and recreation, somebody who's dedicated to securing relationships with other people out in the community and making them aware of these projects we have interest in, and connecting us to funding options, because we have private citizens who are out there building pocket parks and stuff. So they're clearly interested in developing the parks and recreation area of San Angelo, and we should have somebody making a connection to them.
I think that what you propose is for the board to support some program that would help the community to understand the value of the lake and identify few projects that could be part of the lake activities that would be supported by the community altogether. So it's just a question of awareness at this stage. That's what you propose, is try to promote somehow the lake and make it relevant to the community.
Yeah, I agree. There's a definite void between the city of San Angelo feeling like that lake belongs to them, which it does. And but that's a part of educating the public. I'm sure there's less than 2% of the people that live in San Angelo that aren't even aware that this lake plan was put together. I think they'd be real excited to see the details, just like I was when I first saw it and saw some of the ideas. Some of them are a little far-fetched, but some are very realistic, and I think they'd be just like me, and a majority of them would have a lot of excitement about seeing that in their backyard. And it's just a matter of, like I said, getting the ball rolling, figuring out maybe what I'd recommend is visiting with some of these ideas with the Lake Nazareth Homeowners Association. We're talking about it through the Parks and Recreation now, just maybe coming together with a priority list of what are some of the ideas that we can see in the near future, and those that may take a few years down the road after we get our infrastructure set up like we need to.
But don't you think that the reaction of the San Angelo public was, well, they want to invite developers to build a hotel and a commercial center? Nothing about trails, nothing about natural habitat, nothing about taking these assets we have over there and basically put them in a format where everybody would be interested to go there, bike and jog and climb. And so the whole thing was the city wants to make it a commercial deal. That's the way I understood it at the time. So maybe now we're to reverse, and as Debbie said, okay, let's prioritize with the homeowners association a smaller plan that will be more nature, parks, recreation oriented. Forget these, views of development, and let's take this what we have today into a less costly plan and see how it works. Maybe that would be a better approach.
That sounds logical to me.
Well, what's exciting is there's $14.5 million right now in the Lake Nasworthy Fund. And I don't know how much interest that brings in every year. Do you know how much, Carl?
I don't have it with me.
But we've got a good chunk of money, and not, that the city is, of course, is going to have to, it's going to me, be like a bond issue that we put forth to the city of San Angelo. This is what we foresee happening at the lake, and we're going to have to sell that to the city of San Angelo because it's their money, and they need to have ownership in it, and it's got to be items that they're going to want to use and need to use. I mean, we need, boy, do we need more recreation and parks for our citizens to enjoy here in San Angelo. And like I said, Nasworthy is a golden nugget for that. And a lot of those can be put together with very little money because a lot of it's natural habitat that's just going to take some organizing and, yes, a little money to put together. But
Debbie did have some items. I thought I made bullets of them on a slide. I don't see that I have them on the slide, but I do. She did send me a list of items that they're talking about in the Homeowners Association. I want to make sure she has an opportunity to mention those.
a lot of those fall in line with some of the plan ideas. At our meeting back in February, we spoke about it a little bit. The walking pedestrian trail from the neighborhood Walmart there on Knickerbocker out to the main bridge of Nasworthy, and about halfway where Beatty Road intersects with Knickerbocker is an excellent site for another potential birding area. And I think that's an area, I'm not sure yet that we included that, but I believe that is city land, is it not?
I'm pretty sure it is.
And it's
Right about here.
runoff area from the southwest San Angelo neighborhoods that kind of drains that direction, let's put it that way. And there's some water that runs across the bridge there at Beatty Road. It would make an excellent birding area. And we would really like to see a safe pedestrian walk, bike trail provided for the citizens of San Angelo to use to get out to the lake in a safe manner. As for right now, as you know, there's no space for walking, jogging, biking, any of that, which, again, Nasworthy is our nugget, and that's where people like to go to exercise, and it'd be great to have a safe venue or a passage for them to get out that direction.
You're talking about basically.
And the birding area, again, it's a wetland area. There's a lot of birds that stay there. It'd be a great place to provide a boardwalk around that wetlands area with some educational information for people that are walking that direction. That was one of the ideas we thought would be very realistic coming up in the near future. Some of the other ideas were now, I'm not speaking on behalf of all the Lake Nasworthy homeowners, but I'd love to see some commercial development in Mary Lee Park area. I mean, we've got some good things started through the city with the beaches, but they're not maintained well. We need to, work on maintaining those beaches. That includes the Horseshoe area as well as the Mary Lee Park. I think we've really got to work on making what areas we do have in existence, keeping those up and keeping them safe for our citizens to utilize. Because I know some of the areas, especially the Horseshoe area, is not safe anymore just because the beach is eroded to nothing, and it's not real safe. I'll just say that. We need to try to focus on keeping the safety in those areas. But like to see some commercial development in that Mary Lee Park area. And miniature golf, I think it's a great location for a miniature golf course to be put together somewhere out there in the city property on the lake on the south side.
We moved the prairie dogs out, so we have space now.
There's, I think the NASWR, the association, did not have a meeting last month either. I'd love to go to them in their upcoming meeting in a couple weeks and see what other ideas they might have, and maybe we can put this subject on the next meeting with an update from them as well.
Quick question, was there discussion on this bike trail from Walmart out to the bridge? Would that be in the current highway right-of-way, or would you add a right-of-way outside of that area so it's more safer for people to travel that?
I think there's a setback on the west side of Knickerbocker that could be utilized for that particular trail. I don't know the specifics, but we could probably look into that.
All that stuff you gotta go across and traffic lights.
I think there's room to make a bike lane. You have to cross the wetland. Once you get to the bridge, it becomes a little more challenging. How do you get across the bridge? Other than the wetland, I think there's room to make the bike lane on Knickerbocker.
And a couple of the other ideas I forgot to mention, I know the hillside, as you know, Gun Club Road, Hillside Road, it's a very popular area right now for people to exercise on. To me, it's a no-brainer to provide the walkers, joggers, bikers their own separate trail around that hill at, somewhere so far up it. But anyway, to me, that would be you've got the demand, you've got people using it now, but it's, again, another safety hazard for the people that live there and the people that are using it on a daily basis. But you'll go by there's an average of 20 to 40 cars parked there on a nice day. Go by there today about 5 o'clock, you'll be amazed how many people go out there to exercise. But, our citizens show us where they like to exercise or what they love the lake area. And I foresee them utilizing any biking trails or jogging trails that are safe out there when we put them together at some point in the future. But that would be one of those. And the other one,
And those two concepts of trails at the hill are shown on this map. The red around the hill shows, I think, what's existing on the roadway. The purple actually takes you up on the hill and does a loop around on top of the hill.
Well, okay, definitely there is something
it's
there.
in the concrete road.
The trails seem to be something not as costly, maybe, as the rest. And definitely they belong to the activities of parks and recreation. The commercial activities, whatever they are, do not belong, I believe, to this board or to the Parks and Recreation. If the Owners Association wants to find some incentive for somebody to go over there by defining, a potential number of dollars that can be bought and exchanged in any given business, that's not, I feel, our problem. I think the HOA has to understand that as Parks and Recreation, the staff and the advisory board can only look at potential improvements to the parks aspect or recreation aspects of this area. We have basically one thing today coming up, which is the walking, biking trails improvements. If that's the case, I would recommend that we look further with the HOA at what it is, and eventually put a recommendation to add it to the capital program next year. I don't know what you members of this board think, but that would make sense to me. Do we need a motion, Carl, to
You can make
for
a
the
recommendation if you
recommendation?
want.
I move we accept that recommendation. That makes a lot of sense. Now, is that hill, is that city property, or is that,
It is city
the whole
property,
thing is, there's no private property on there, or?
except for the residences around it. It's city property. There may be some private properties that go into the hill a bit, but the majority of the hill is city property.
Okay, I would propose then a motion to recommend going further in the definition of these trail projects that HOA has identified.
That was my motion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, then do we have a second?
Second that.
Okay, that's the motion is approved.
And there was one other idea, and this is like the adopt-a-spots we have throughout the city of San Angelo, where people maintain little areas of grass, throughout San Angelo, adopt-a-spots. This is another idea we came up with, or I came up with anyway, and I'm putting it to the Lake Nazareth Homeowners Association at their next meeting, but the idea is to adopt an island out at Lake. The Homeowners Association is talked to the city about acquiring one of the islands, and they're kind of adopting it. But I thought that would be a great idea to the city of San Angelo, organizations, clubs, schools, maybe even, if they wanted to adopt an island. It might be a great way to get riprap done on some of those islands that we can't afford to do at this point, but some of the organizations can, come together and take care of that island, maintaining it. Of course, we have to pick the islands that aren't going to affect the quote-unquote wildlife, so I guess that's something we'd have to really look at.
There's some down here, and I think a lot of them are right there.
Oh, there's plenty.
Yeah, there's plenty.
Plenty to go around, but I thought that would be a great idea, to get
in
the
terms
city
of
of San
that-
Angelo,
In terms of city property, the Adopt-a-Spot program does go through Parks and Recreation, so that's something we could collaborate on to at least get the word out about, and we may need to tour some of those islands to see how you would access those, but we could get the word out that islands are available.
Adoptable.
Yes, adoptable.
And what the restrictions and requirements would be
Right.
within that
It'd be a
realm.
little bit different because you'd have to have a
Sure.
boat to get out to.
Yeah, but I thought that'd be a great, another great way to help clean up the lake and make it look better and rip-rap some of those islands and, hello.
That goes to
That's
what
a
I was
win-win.
thinking of, just creative ways
Right.
to go get some of this done.
And that would help, again, organizations in San Angelo to feel like again, that lake is part of theirs, So I think it kind of would work well with that. And I'm sure there's going to be many more ideas coming, but that's all I can think of at the
Of a
moment.
motion.
Do we need a motion?
We still have a motion.
Yeah.
We haven't
Do
voted.
we want to add to that this program of
Adopt an island.
adopt an
Yeah.
island? Is that something?
I don't think we need action on that. That's something we can coordinate with.
Yeah, I think so too.
It's a program-related item, not a project.
Yeah, okay. But we have we had a motion and we had a second on the previous one. That's done, right?
Regarding the
Okay,
trails.
good.
Oh,
No vote taken.
there's no vote?
No
Sorry.
vote.
All in favor?
Wait, public comment?
For, all in favor for this resolution, say aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, the motion is accepted. Thank you. On a side note, I thought that maybe we could organize a little visit with the park staff to take us to the different areas. I don't know if you'd be interested. It's just a trail of car. We can beat 4x cars or whatever.
Sure.
Would that be of some interest to the members of the board?
Be acceptable.
You're talking about getting on the water or?
No.
No.
Oh, okay, okay.
No.
We don't
Try
have
to
a,
get
we
to
don't have
the
a boat.
trails.
Okay.
Try to get to the site where these trails would be in place and understand just what it is, where it is, so we can be more enthusiastic about it, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
So if you could give us a date at which time it would be possible, I definitely would be there. And we can gather at some point and take only a few cars. Okay? Okay, good. So I think, unless you have other comments, that we took care of the agenda number 2 and number 3. Do we have any more comments? Okay, so we're closed. Now, the number 4 was for Carl to update us on several projects. Now, Carl, maybe before you start, we need to take every single project, then stop, ask for comment or questions, and once we have, I guess, answer to the questions or receive the comment, go further, because this is a large list, or long list.
And we can go through these very quickly, though.
Okay,
Because
fine.
they're quick updates. And,
Well, at the end, we just say any comment. If there's no comment, you go
Right,
further.
okay.
I just want to give everybody the possibility to make a comment as we go, and the topic is still hot.
So Brent's going to start off with his projects, then Roger, then I'll follow up.
Great.
All right, so good afternoon. I am Brent Casey, the Recreation Manager. Welcome back to the board. I've read lots of documents and things from previous time that you were on here, so good to have you back. I'm going to update you on 29th Street Sports Complex, Texas Bank Sports Complex restrooms, which is on Quad 2, and the Station 618 parking lot area. So we're going to start off with 29th Street Sports Complex, and again, we'll go through these pretty quick, as Carl said. If you have any questions, obviously I'll try to answer them the best I can. If you remember, we went with LPA, and they came up with the plan, and there was going to be 3 fields out there. One of them currently exists. The other 2 were going to be, the hill was going to be leveled, and we're going to come up with 2 new fields, and kind of a little bit different configuration than what has been out there in the past. But the problem we ran into is that once we got the plan and everything together, we came up with a budget of $1.8 million, which is not what we had. We had a total of $1.75, and the construction budget was supposed to be somewhere around $1.4. So we went into the process, and it seems like we've been, next Tuesday I'll be in this position for 3 years. So it feels like we've been working on it for about 3 years and 6 months already. But we're getting there, getting closer, and it's coming along. So we've been looking at different ways to cut things down. We looked at eliminating the concession stand. That's been taken out of the batting cage area, so it'll just be a storage area with some covered batting cages. So currently we have the 3 fields going in, and when one of them currently already there and being refurbished, and the 3 covered batting cage areas that can be pushed back so it can be used for multiple different things. So where we are right now, still trying to get it down to that 1.4 million, is we are waiting on them to come up with a new plan for the irrigation system, and we're trying to cut out some, against the parks guys behind me back here, but we're trying to cut out some of the irrigation outside of the ball fields and the common areas. So hopefully with that, we'll be able to get it down into budget and be able to move forward with it. So that's 29th Street.
Just a clarification, the restrooms are still.
Restrooms are still there, yes, just not the concession stand. Concession area, I guess I should say.
Has the area been filled yet, or nothing has been done?
Nothing's been done,
Okay.
just lots of conversations on it, sir.
Trying to finalize the design so we can bid it out.
Yes.
We had that grant from Texas Rangers.
Yes, the $10,000 grant that we
Limit on
received.
that, or we got the money, or how do we do that?
We did receive the check. It's been put into the account, and that is specifically for $10,000 toward the covered batting cages, is what that was to be used for, yes. Texas Bank Sports Complex, the restrooms, which would be going on Quad 2. Not near as bad for this one. Started out with a budget of somewhere around $623,000, a little bit over that. And this last time, after it was taken to council and everything, the first time it was over budget. The bids came back over budget. It was denied, cut some things away. It was going to be just like the buildings that are currently on Quad 1 and Quad 3. But we had to take the concession again out of there. So basically what's going into Quad 2 is just a restroom facility and a closet for the janitors to clean the restrooms. Came back at $395,000 and was awarded to Justice Construction. So the only thing we have left to do there for that one is we will have a pre-construction meeting here very quick in the near future, and they are still, my understanding is they are still scheduled to start on May the 14th. So here in just the next couple of weeks, you'll start seeing some things out there if everything goes well with the pre-construction meeting. So moving right along with that one. Parking lot at Station 618, been working with the Old Town individuals and been having a lot of meetings with them as well. It's very much needed area for the parking. The seniors kill me if I didn't throw that in there. So make sure I got that part in there. But they're very anxious to get it going. But once the contract of the chapel will begin mid to late May of this year. So again, here pretty quick. And then once that is done, then we will press forward with the parking lot area and all of that. So.
I did want to mention one thing. I don't know if you remember David Knapp. He's the architect. He moved to Austin, so.
And we miss him.
We do miss him. So we're having to pick up all these projects on our own and try to move them forward. So it slowed us up a little bit, but we're still moving forward.
Any questions on any of my three?
How many parking spaces are you putting in at?
About 40?
I was going to say 48, I believe is what it was. There was a couple of different configurations that David Knapp came up with for us on how to place them, and we actually put it out to the seniors and allowed them to vote on it, and it came back like it was all but 4 people wanted it one certain way, and I believe it was 48 if I'm not mistaken.
It's on the east side of the,
Yes, where the current parking lot is now and then where we tore down the old building there. Thank you very much.
Brent?
Good afternoon, Roger Havlock, Park Senior Manager. I have 4 items to discuss. The first one is the dog park renovations. As you are probably already aware of, we opened that dog park last year. In the planting stages, we were too late to plant any Bermuda grass to try to grass that area. And so over the winter, we've had some minor improvements with irrigation, and we just fertilized and seeded it just the other day. And so it is currently closed. We did open an area just on the south side of the pond for a non-leash area. And so hopefully here in about a month, we'll be ready to reopen. We also put some new obstacles. There's 4 or 5 different obstacles in each, both the small dog park and the large dog park, for people to enjoy as well. Most of the landscaping is already complete, and so hopefully once we're going to reopen, we'll reopen for good, and we won't have any more delays with that. Any questions about the dog park?
Have all your plantations done well, all the trees?
I'm sorry?
All the trees worked well that you planted last fall?
So far. We have lost a few, but we also replaced some that we had some issues with. But for the most part, we've been pretty successful. One of the problems in that area is that the water table is so high, and so when we moved the dog park closer to Millbrook, I think that seemed to help. We had a lot more topsoil to work with, and the water table is not so close near the surface for that, because that's some pretty salty water in that area as well.
I'll say that my dog is going insane with energy, so we're very much looking forward to the dog park being back open.
Did you say how long it'll be closed?
We're looking at the end of May. It's going to need that long for the grass. If we can get the grass up to get it established, and hopefully by then it'll be ready.
I was going to ask if y'all could post on those community boards more, like, where I've figured out where the area is. It's that large open lot. But I and several people who go spent forever trying to figure out where
Right.
y'all are trying to point
It's
us
a good
to.
idea.
And so if there could be a little more advertising, because it just gives the address,
Right.
you know, which is the dog park. And so if you could just point toward that interior lot. And like I also went with the intention of thinking maybe y'all had set up some kind of some barrier.
Yeah, no,
and
it's
then
an
it
open
wasn't.
field.
So if we could advertise that it's not an enclosed area,
Okay.
because I came over there with that intention.
Okay, good
And I also
suggestions.
know that the Boulevard has mentioned they're looking into opening a dog park on property. So maybe y'all could work with them to put advertising there when they open that up in the next couple of months, so that people know that there's also this community one. Because, you know, as dog people, we want to take them to different places. So sometimes you might get bored at the apartment, and it's good to know that there's a new one. You know,
Another
there's
one.
the one with the city, so.
Okay, good suggestions. Any other comments or questions on that? Okay. The next one is Brentwood Park. We've been in the process of renovating Brentwood Park now for a few months. We recently did have to pull off. We have several time-sensitive projects that we needed to get completed. But here, within probably about a week or so, we'll be finishing up those other projects, and we'll be right back out there. We're about probably close to 50% through with the trails in terms of the concrete sidewalks that we're putting around. We'll begin back with those. We're in the process of ordering the playground equipment, and there'll also be a pavilion structure that'll be placed close to where the playground is as well. And so, again, we hope to get right back on that project, and I'm not for sure in terms of when we'll get finished with it, but I'll get back with you as we get further down the line. But we've had a few delays, but things are looking positive now to get back on track with that one. So, any questions?
Little park, Roger, right across off of A&M.
Kiwanis.
Yeah, no, that's Kiwanis. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, that one is a kind of a quote unquote closed park.
Noticed. That's why I
everything.
was
Everything
asking.
was pulled from that. That was several years ago that occurred. Brentwood is off of what's the
Forge Park and
Howard?
Howard?
Yeah, Howard and Forest Park, yeah. Okay, and the next one, improvements to the Neffs area. Neffs area is just below Eggemeyer's, that parking lot, and then you have that open space, and then the Celebration Bridge, just north of the Concho River. We identified areas that we were getting a lot of soil erosion through that area under those live oak trees. We've always wanted to put turf in there. With the improvements that occurred to the Concho River several years ago, there was irrigation placed in there, but there wasn't enough funds to put any kind of retaining wall or add topsoil. We did come up with the funds. We had some leftover funds with the Concho River project, and so now we do have that retaining wall put in. We just put the topsoil in, and for the last 2 days, we've been sodding that whole area with zoysia grass. And so we'll be completed tomorrow. We have 8 more pallets to put out, and so that project hopefully will be finished up here pretty soon. So any comments or questions about that one? The last project that I have on my list is Civic League Park. One of the goals that we've had for a while is to do some improvements to Civic League Park right off of Harris and Park Avenue. One of our goals was to improve the turf on that area. We didn't have sufficient irrigation for the last few years, and so I had some funds left over from last year, and we used those to go in and do some improvements to that irrigation so that we could come back and try to seed it this spring. And so just this past week, we were able to purchase a seeder, and we've used that to go in and seed that entire park. We didn't kill off any of the other existing vegetation. We basically went in and interseeded into it. And so we're using that cedar in other park locations too, where we've lost some ground due to traffic and lack of irrigation or such. But hopefully we'll see some improvements there on that end. We're also in the process of painting the fence that surrounds the water lily collection. We have is it the IWGS that's going to have their conference here in September at the same time that we're having Riverfest.
It's an international group.
Yes. And so we're excited about trying to get a lot of the improvements done there at Civic League as well. Any questions about?
Not on Civic League, but I had one more. The last time I was at the dog park, there was someone who had a really nice lemonade stand set up, and I'm sure it's against all kinds of codes and regulations, but it would be cool to encourage that or find ways to have that out there. It was really nice how it was set up. I didn't have cash with me, but would have used it, and there were other people who were using it, and it was just really nice to have that option out there. So since there was somebody who was interested in doing that, it would be cool to see that move forward, with different ways of encouraging that or working toward having options like that out there.
On a food truck area or something?
Yeah.
Just
It was
for
something
snacks
simple.
and
It was just kind of
drinks.
like a dragon cart, but it was very well done.
Okay. Okay. All right. Any other? All right. Appreciate it.
Roger. So is Mr. White
I'll just stay here.
taking the next?
I'm going to go in reverse order. So the first one is the sculpture garden at Sunken Garden Park. As you were aware, as Howard Taylor came to propose, we talked about enhancing the sculpture garden, the park at the sculpture garden at Sunken Garden Park near the visitor center. So we went, I think, 3 times to the Development Corporation, finally got a recommendation from them for $75,000 for design work for those enhancements to the park. We took that to City Council. City Council did agree to award those funds. And so we're in the process of doing the budget amendments, which takes 2 readings through City Council to move that money into an account so we can finish the request for qualifications and send those out. That's where we're at on that project.
What is the project that we consider? Is that what we've seen on in the presentation, where you connect with the
Yes.
bottom of the trail,
Yes,
and there's a cascade or some water flowing?
yes.
Oh, that's the whole thing.
Enhancements to the park, right, the entrances, the walkways, the connections.
Wow.
Hopefully, we can afford improvements to the water feature, signage, lighting, those enhancements. So with the money we have is to do the design work. And so with the design, we'll know better what the cost will be so that fundraising
Where is
can
the
happen.
$75,000 coming from?
Half-cent sales tax.
Oh. Okay.
I guess the question I had on that project was the pavilion. Did that ever-
No pavilion.
No pavilion? I thought it'd been sure nice to have one, but I guess that didn't count.
No pavilion. That wasn't conceived. We may have talked about it, but
I thought the last time when I asked the question, they were gonna take a look at it, but I guess it wasn't worth looking at.
well, I mean, a pavilion could be added.
Be a real good idea to have a pavilion there, especially when we have all these artists in town and everybody coming around, a place to kind of get out of the sun and do their public speaking deals, whatever it is. Refreshments.
When we get into the design, we can keep that on the table for consideration. Okay. Next one, unless there's any other questions. This item went through the Public Art Commission to City Council, not to the Parks Recreation Advisory Board, but we are getting 2 sets of sculptures to Bart DeWitt Park, basically behind the old Western Mattress Concho Crossing area at the bend on the river below Oak Street and Johnson Dam. most people know it as the Lady in Blue. It's going to be the Lady in Blue with a child, Native American child, and then the other set is a Humano Indian Brave, which those sculptures are going to be placed in May. I think the dedication is May 20, and then following, hopefully in the fall with their fundraising, will be money to do the landscaping that's around that. So if you go down there now, you'll see the two concrete pedestals where the sculptures will be placed. So you may have seen something about that in the news, and so that is coming.
Is that the area that you considered for the food trucks at some point of time? No,
No.
not at all.
We had talked about the skate park location, but
Oh, yeah, excuse me, yeah. So we forget about that other use.
Where are we on the, I know that the food truck vendors were going to meet and try and organize, but we haven't really been updated on that since
it's not on
then.
the agenda, so I can't talk, but I can update you
On
after
the
this.
next agenda.
Sure, if you want.
Sure.
We've done some work on the side on that. I can update you. Let's see. The item on continued work on riverbank stabilization. So as you know, we did the big river project, which was mostly funded by half-cent sales tax. That was in 2013. That phase is basically from Central High School down to Oak Street, Johnson Dam. The second phase was always to be from Johnson Dam running east to Bell Street. And we talked to council about continuing those efforts, but there just wasn't any funds to do it. It's going on maybe 10, 12 years, we've had continued erosion down there, basically below, it's Rio Concho Gardens, but behind Robert Massey Funeral Home. If you go back there, you'll see significant erosion. We've actually closed off sections of the trail because the bank is underneath the trail. And you'll see if you go drive along that section of Rio Concho Drive, you'll see orange construction fence. Those are erosion areas where we have problems. So we've really been concerned about that. So we're trying to figure out how we can address some of those areas short of a major project. So we've been working with Upper Colorado River Authority, talking to city management, talking to city council members, and going to be taking an item to city council, the second meeting in May, to ask for authorization for us to set some matching monies aside and work with the Upper Colorado River Authority to apply for Texas a TCEQ grant. Fortunately, it's a 60%, 40% match. So we're going to ask for about $600,000 in a grant with $400,000 matching funds, so we can basically do some bank stabilization along that stretch of the river from where Concho Avenue crosses the river as far as about $1 million will take us. So just want you, when you hear about that, see an item going to council about that, that's what that is. We're trying to round up some matching money and a grant to do some serious needed bank stabilization work. It's a must-do kind of project.
How do we stabilize? Are we using rocks or are we using decorative steps so the public can, sit, go down to the water? What are we considering?
This one, it's going to be a combination, but a big part of it is actually going back and actually cutting the slope, cutting back into the ground and sloping the ground. Right now, it's basically 90 degrees or more than that in a lot of cases. So we have to come back and slope the ground, cut it, take that soil, build some berms in the park, and then come back mostly with riprap, the large rocks that you see mostly along the river now, come back and use that riprap to secure the banks where the worst parts are. There's not going to be many sections where we can do the slab rock, where we can get flat access. At this point, it's just going to be important just to secure the banks of the river before we lose them all.
If we do it with the big rocks, we never come back. So it would be a sub-interest to try to manage few areas that are more convenient.
I think there's going to be some areas that we
Absolutely.
can do that,
Okay.
where the bank is already pretty low to the river.
Great.
There's probably 2 or 3 areas along
Okay.
that stretch where we can do that.
Okay.
But throughout the majority of it, we won't be able to.
How much of that garden area is potentially can be lost in that?
And you may be picturing gazebo gardens, because back behind gazebo gardens, across from this building, the erosion is almost to the walkway where the garden starts.
Yeah, yeah, and if you have to level it back, how much,
And,
I mean,
and
is it
that,
almost gonna come, get rid of all that?
right,
and
in that
come to the
case,
street?
in that location, we may just have to do the riprap. I think, I think the way most of this happened was that the city in the past used to drain this section of the river to use for the water. And when it was drained on occasion, it dried the banks. The roots died in those areas. So when they filled back up, the soil in the banks filled up with moisture, which caused weight, and then that's how a lot of it sloughed off. So I think we did it to ourselves, but it's in a condition now where we're, in one section, it's almost to the road. When you hear about that item, that's what that's about. The last one, I think there's one more, is talking about the Santa Fe Park, efforts to conceptualize Santa Fe Park improvements. So Santa Fe Park is still overseen by the Park Commission, but you've been aware of some of the discussions that we've had about re-envisioning Santa Fe Park, which basically runs from the high school down to where the YMCA is. But it also includes connections to Civic League Park, the potential Botanic Gardens, Sunken Garden Park where the Sculpture Garden is, and running back east along both banks of the river. So we've talked about this, and I've written articles about the possibility of recreating Santa Fe Park into something else. I call it a Central Park, something with, something that the whole community can use in terms of passive recreation, open spaces, nice landscaping, topography, and not as a golf course. We've gotten the San Angelo Area Foundation interested in this project, re-envisioning the park, and some of the advisory board members serve on a committee that are in the process of selecting a firm to develop a master plan to re-envision what this park could be. And I think we met yesterday to make a recommendation on a firm. So if you hear anything about that, that's what that's about. The Area Foundation is interested in this project, and the first part of this master plan, it appears mostly would be funded by the Area Foundation and maybe some private donors. So it's really just conceptualizing what Santa Fe Park could be if it's not fully a golf course now. I don't know if any of the board members want to talk to it. They were on the committee. But I personally am excited about this. I think it has great potential for the city to recreate this park as something that could be used both for the community and for tourism. And I'm not picturing, me personally, I'm not picturing adding an amphitheater down there where you have a lot of noise, because we have residents who live nearby. And I'm not picturing, bringing back large, noisy events with lots of music and noise. But I do want to bring life back to the park, where you have people out there walking, playing games, having a scratch ball game, walking trails, hanging out.
Miniature golf. I love miniature golf. It would be a
Miniature
great place
golf?
for a
You like
miniature
miniature
golf
golf?
course. Yeah, it would.
Well, we do have miniature golf at the
We need one
Boston.
in San Angelo. I mean, one in the core of the city.
But part of this process is to hear from the public what the public
Right.
is interested in having. So we're definitely not going to, conceptualize something that the public doesn't want to do.
Carl, I think that during some of our meetings that we've had, one of the things that they expounded on was the fact that the Riverwalk was nationally acknowledged as being a wonderful place, and they wanted to move forward to make it bigger, greater, and that to expand on that and draw more people. And that's one of the things that stuck out in my head, to bring people to the river and experience San Angelo.
Just a little detail. I think that one of the potential funding agencies has requested that the city put a bit of money in the project, at least the master plan. Doesn't mean that it will happen, but that's what was required. It's not. I'm not certain that the whole project will go forward. I think there's some momentum, but there will be definitely a funding question. We don't know how much exactly that study will take, but we understand it's between $150,000 and $200,000. That's what I guess we're looking for.
Right.
Other than that, it's very exciting. There's a lot of interesting links between city center and the park itself. There's probably a lot of potential development coming out of it. There definitely is a question about transportation. Some people were talking about trains. Some people were talking about little trolleys but it is evident that the park will not be used if there's no way to get there. So anyway, that's my take on the whole project. But we are at the point where we have proposed to select a landscape architect to negotiate with. It's pretty advanced in some ways.
I did want to mention that there is a Park Commission member on that committee as well.
Okay.
So who's putting that plan together for the Santa Fe Park?
The San Angelo Area Foundation is leading the efforts now to look into hiring a firm to conceptualize the redevelopment, master planning the redevelopment of the park and how it connects to other parks in that area and along the river.
Yeah, the major feature of the master plan would be to listen to the community and all the stakeholders, so we can eventually organize through that a concurrence between the economic goals, the social goals, cultural goals. And if we get there, there will be huge momentum. The idea is once the whole master plan has been completed, it will be turned to the city, and then the city will basically move forward with, or decide to move forward, ask somebody to move forward with it. I think the new performing arts center was done about that way, where the financing of the studies were made by the private sector, and then it would turn into to the city, who said basically then, well, Area Foundation, we ask you to represent the city, but we own the building, and we will provide part of the financing. That's more or less the way it happened. Right. So it's a public-private partnership at the end of the day.
Right. And I was going to mention that most everybody knows Kids Kingdom, and back in 2002, that property was basically bare with an old metal playground that was barely ever used, and the community led an effort to raise the funds, private funds, and build as a community that playground. So it needs to be a public community effort to re-envision and recreate this park as we did with Kids Kingdom.
Yeah, the library was funded that way, and I think it's a, $15 million project.
Right.
I think the performing art space is a bit more than that. So we're not talking about small amounts.
Right.
San Angelo has been giving. So we just hope that we can reorganize another project around that idea that San Angelo will pay for it, not the city.
But that, in terms of us professionally, it's re-envisioning Santa Fe Park and perhaps recreating it, and looking into the possibility of building a community recreation center. And me personally, those are our top two goals.
Which can be combined.
Well, I'm hoping that is possible.
Anyway, Carl really came up with the idea of that Central Park. And if it happens, we really have to thank him a lot, just for having the vision.
I like to call it Central Park, but I mean, that's kind of a loaded concept. But if you can imagine Central Park, it has so much at that one park for everybody to enjoy. Everybody knows that park. The entire world knows that park. And all the properties around it are some of the most expensive properties in the world.
Okay, thank you, Carl. Next item on the agenda is consideration of future agenda items. So I think we had a suggestion to update on the food trucks movement, or I don't know exactly how we can call that.
Update on.
Well, I think you proposed to locate the food trucks into a certain area,
Right.
where they could become part of the downtown restaurant environment.
And remember, the recommendation that came out of that discussion was that we hold a public forum, which we
Yes.
did. And so that it kind of morphed from there, and I can give an update on the direction we're taking since then. We're not really backing or leading any effort to have a city-owned food truck area. We're trying to facilitate.
Okay,
We're trying to facilitate food trucks.
just the update on the facilitation process.
Okay.
I personally would like to know if we came up with a city ordinance for the speed limit at the Spring Creek Marina. We spent a lot of time on it.
It's still working.
It's still working?
Right.
Okay.
We'll have an update on it.
Any other suggestion for this agenda for the next meeting, which will take place at what
It's on here.
time? May 24th. Okay. So anyway, any other suggestions?
I think we can get a report back from the Lake Nasworthy Homeowners Association as to priorities.
Okay. In the
for
meantime, we may
the
have
Lake
our,
area
we may have a little trip there.
Parks and Recreation.
And why not to put a placeholder for update on the Santa Fe Park improvement project? We may have some ideas on how we are negotiating, and maybe how we can fund. How we can fund the whole the whole master plan. Maybe there would be something coming out.
I thought you were
of
talking
that.
about the project.
No.
We're not ready for that.
No, the master plan.
Okay.
I think we all bet on the master plan to be so successful that people will come up with ideas. Say, I would like to finance this, or I would like to finance that.
That's the goal.
Maybe Matt could come and talk.
Who?
Matt Lewis. Maybe Matt Lewis could come and talk.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Good, that would be a good update. Anything else? Well, then I would consider a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Well, then we adjourned.